All right, we're live. Welcome to Residing in North Idaho. We have a special guest today, which I'm really excited that we got connected with. This is Bruce Mattare. I said it right, didn't I?
Yes, you did.
Yeah. He's Kootenai County Commissioner, one of the three, and he joined us today. He wanted to come on and talk about some of the things going on in Kootenai County, and we're pretty excited to have that conversation. So thanks, Bruce. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. What, I guess, give us some background on where you tell us about yourself. How about that? That's an easier way to say it.
Well, I relocated from a conservative state. A lot of people have heard of it, called Virginia. I grew up in Washington, D.C. as a kid.
Oh, man.
Went to University of Maryland, graduated from high school in Maryland. And as time went by, the area that I grew up in became unrecognizable, very different. And I was in the process of starting a family. And one of the things that happened, and you may recall that elementary school in Connecticut that got shot up.
Yep.
Well, I was down in South America at the time watching American news, and that had happened. I'll never forget this school district suspended a 10-year-old for chewing a Pop-Tart into what the teacher thought was the shape of a gun.
Oh, goodness. My gosh. Oh, goodness.
And that was the school district I graduated high school from. And I just said, I don't want to raise my kids in that kind of an environment. I'm a big Second Amendment advocate. In college, I worked at a gun shop, which was my first introduction into politics, believe it or not. When you grow up in D.C., you don't really deal with politics. You hang out with your friends, And I learned a lot about, just especially in Maryland, because they weren't very pro-gun. They weren't very pro-gun rights. So it was death by 1,000 cuts. Every time it was just another law, another restriction, another way to keep you from being able to purchase a firearm or defend yourself. And so that's when I said, it's time to move. It's time to leave the area. And I've been to most other parts of the country, but I'd never been to this part, the inland Northwest. And one of the things I like about Idaho is that it's a very pro-gun state. It's very pro-Second Amendment, pro-defend yourself, and pro-gun rights. And so when we came out here, my wife and I, we really liked it. We said, let's give it a try. And that was 10 years ago.
That was a good time to move here.
It was a good time.
You beat a lot of the rush.
Yes.
So you have a business on the side as well? Is that because commissioners aren't, is there salary involved in that, or is it not? How's that work? I think most people don't know.
It's a salaried position.
Yeah.
It's generally a full-time position.
Okay.
But full-time in the sense that I look at it as when you're at the commissioner level, your job is to make good decisions for the community. You're a policy person. If you want to spend your time dealing with administrative issues, I guess you could. But I'm elected by the people to represent their will and to develop the policy that represents what they want. And so I look at it as, how do I help develop the right policy for this community?
I love that. What made you even want to get into politics in that level?
Well, I think anyone who's been paying attention can see that our country is changing very rapidly. And we're starting to see things that are becoming very disturbing. And as a consequence, back in 2019, the sheriff's race was just starting. And so I know that the sheriff plays a very important role, especially out here in the West, as far as protecting people's rights and keeping communities safe. And so I did my research on the different candidates that were running at the time, and I found one that I wanted to help. And so I approached that person and said, I want to help you with your campaign. And we started meeting about once a week. And about 3-4 weeks into it, this is around May of 2019, he asked if I would be his campaign manager. And I'd never done anything like that before, but I realized afterwards that I said yes before I thought about it. And it turned out to be just a knockdown, kick 'em, drag 'em through the mud fight. And so that person was Bob Norris, and he won in a four-way race in the primary with 45% of the vote. And he's our sheriff now. And he's one of the best sheriffs I think that this county could ever have at this point.
Yeah.
So
I love his press releases.
Yeah. Yeah. I have this vision of him from the 4th of July parade, standing in the back of a truck, rolling in the parade with his revolver on his hip. And I was like, that is the image of the sheriff that I want.
Is that a big black truck? That
it was awesome. I think so. Yeah. Yeah.
That's my truck.
It's pretty awesome. Oh,
Nice.
well, nicely done. I was like, that's the image. Like that's like the small town America. And that's what I want. I love sheriffs because they're elected and they can do what needs to get done.
That's right. And, it's surprising because I think right in the Seattle area, the sheriff is now appointed. In Delaware, they stripped their arrest powers.
Oh my goodness.
All they do now, I think, is evictions.
That's,
oh my God.
It's that like slow erosion that you're talking about at the beginning of instead of making these big changes, we make these small incremental changes over time that people barely notice.
Yeah.
And that's how a change is affected for the negative.
That's right. And, police chiefs, on the other hand, they report to the mayors or the county executives. And typically they're the ones that have to fall on their sword when something doesn't go right. And then that mayor says, well, we fixed the problem. But generally, the problem isn't the individual. The problem is the system. Here, at least, the sheriff is accountable to the constituency. And so, that's who they serve and not a boss, if you will.
Yeah.
So once Bob got elected, I kind of figured my job was done. But then he started talking to me about how we weren't properly funding our law enforcement here. Now, to me, defunding and underfunding are the same thing. And, this area is growing fast, faster than a weed, if you ask me. And the reality is that we're starting to see those bigger city problems here. With growth comes more crime. It's just, it is the strongest correlator to crime in a community. And so that's kind of what led me to run for county commissioner.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you're absolutely right. We hear that a lot. There are some local people here that grew up here that don't like the growth. And sometimes we get targeted because we have a real estate YouTube and they think we're the problem. However, it's like, I try to express that to them. It's like, it's nobody's fault. It's a great place to live. People like the values here. People are going to move here. And with that comes more traffic, comes more crime, comes all of those things.
Yeah, but it also comes with liberal policies. Okay, because the reality is that there is no such thing as a conservative city. That with density, you have to have more rules. So at one point where you live, you could shoot a rifle in your backyard, right? But with density, you can't do that.
Right.
And so that's where I think we have to recognize that if we're going to have more growth, we're going to have more liberal policies. It's inevitable. It's the way it works. It has nothing to do with what we want or what we don't want. Eventually, there will be enough people compacted into a particular geography that someone will run for office and say, I will fix this for you. Because there's always that 2 or 3% that are kind of nuisances, if you will, that don't really respect the mores of a community, the unspoken rules, if you will, of decency and being considerate towards others. And so that's where the law comes in. And that's where politicians come in to pass these kinds of laws.
Yeah.
I never thought of it like that. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I mean, you can travel anywhere in the country. The more dense it is, the more liberal the laws.
Yeah. Yeah. I literally never thought of that. Is that what leads to these bigger cities then becoming totally blue? Or is it a combination of it starts that way, but then they also have? Well,
I think it begins more with the fact that as more people live in an area, you just need more rules to manage the people.
Yeah.
It just comes down to that, because if you're living in the middle of nowhere, it doesn't matter if you're shooting off fireworks at 3 a.m. or shooting your gun, night shooting or something like that. You're not bothering anybody.
Right.
But eventually, as more people move in, those types of activities cannot continue.
Yeah.
And some people are going to continue them because there's no law preventing them from doing it. And so that's what leads to the laws.
Yeah. Yeah. Good call. Can we circle back to you had mentioned law enforcement and the pay. because that's a big issue we see. I've got a lot of ties in the law enforcement community, and I know a lot of guys that end up going in over the border into Washington and working because the pay is better over there. And I'm, like, what is being done or what can be done to counteract that? Because I feel, and this is my guess here, the tax base is there now because there's a lot more people here. How does that catch up to where it becomes desirable to come? Because we want our cops to live and work in the same community. That's always the best thing. Mm-hmm. Is there like a plan for that, or?
Well, okay. So I haven't finished my first year yet, but I finished my first budget.
Yeah.
And so what we did was we looked at Coeur d'Alene's police department's pay, and we modeled it to be 3% below that.
Okay.
And so we passed that. That is now in effect. And we're already starting to see deputies. One in particular came back to the sheriff's office, and other people are starting to revisit the Kootenai County Sheriff's office. So I think it's very important that we pay people well, because you can demand more, and you often get better employees that way.
Yeah.
Okay. And so another reason why we increased the pay is because I did basically a study on how much money we're spending recruiting and training deputies.
I read that article. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what happened was we figured out that it cost about $105,000 for the county to recruit and train a deputy to the point that their field training officer has signed off on them. Mm. And that means that they can drive a cruiser by themselves, but they're still a brand new deputy. It takes about 5 years until you really have enough experience that you're running on your own. You're a high performer at that point. You're efficient with your job.
I can attest to that. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Because in the beginning, you're constantly calling your supervisor. What do I do? How do I do that? How do I deal with this situation, and so forth? But as time goes by, you become much more efficient, and you can manage your time very efficiently. Well, we looked at, it cost $105,000 to recruit and train. Then we looked at how many deputies we hired from like 2010 to about 2017, and how many are still with us after 5 years. And out of the 62 that we found, only 29 were still with us.
Wow.
All right. So 33 had left. Well, that adds up to $3.5 million in recruiting and training money that county taxpayers paid for that evaporated. And so that's the business case why we want to pay people, so that they don't want to leave.
That's a smart way to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
Is this coming from your business background, bringing these principles into your current position?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That is a really smart, and that's a much easier way to justify it to the public if it needs to be justified. Of, hey, yeah, we're paying more now, but we're saving this down the road.
Well, that's true. And the thing about it is that the county government is really an organization. It's a business. It's a nonprofit business. We're not supposed to be making a profit off of taxpayers, but it is a business. It has revenues coming in, and it has expenses going out. It has employees. It has benefits. It has all kinds of things. So that are similar to a regular for-profit business. So that's how I look at it, is that we should be able to make the numerical case as to why we should be doing something, the dollar case.
Yeah. Yeah. Ah, that's cool. So that's good. And I had heard that Kootenai County deputies got a raise recently.
Yes.
So that is fantastic. I know a few of them over there. Good guys. It's a great department in my opinion. So I'm always happy to see them out there doing their thing. Do you think other counties will follow suit? And I mean, I know it's not your wheelhouse, but what do you think?
Well, right now it's a race to pay the most we can, because they know that in the end they're going to save money on recruiting and training.
Yeah.
So the positions are in demand. They're in demand because state law requires us to be able to provide these services. So if we don't have the bodies, then we can't provide the service.
Yeah. And I think we had touched on this prior to starting the podcast, but is there plans to expand the jail as well?
Well, the jail has already been expanded.
Okay.
But what happened about 5-6 years ago, they didn't complete or finish off the second jail pod. And so that's one of my priorities, is to complete that jail pod. And the main reason for that is because every day for the last year, we have exceeded the functional limit of our jail, meaning that we've gone past the legal limit. It's around 360 inmates. We've been hovering in the high 400s, low 500s almost every day. Okay. Now, the thing about it is that nothing has happened yet. but it is a liability. It's like driving your car doing 100 miles an hour on the interstate, going way past the speed limit without insurance.
Yeah.
Okay. Doesn't mean you're going to get into an accident. Doesn't mean you're going to suffer a financial loss, but you certainly are exposing yourself to that. And so that's why we need to expand the jail so that we can properly house the inmates at a level that is within the regulatory environment. The other reason is that once we expand the jail, or it should not expansion, but complete it, then we can start taking on contracts to house inmates for other agencies. And those contracts add up to somewhere in the range between $1 and $2 million. So that money can go to help support the staffing and pay people properly.
Yeah. There's that business side again. I like it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. What other, I know we had talked about some other expansions, the Justice Building. Do you want to get into that?
Yes.
Okay.
That right now is something that I kind of walked into midstream. And I'm a little disappointed that it's ended up the way that it has. It started off in February of 2022. I didn't take office until January of 2023. But the initial proposal was $22 million.
Can I backtrack and explain what it is? Because some people probably don't even know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
I should have you explain it.
Sure. It's the expansion of the Justice Center. It's adding 3 courtrooms and additional office space for the Criminal Justice Department, which includes prosecutors, adult misdemeanor probation, courts, judges, clerks, things like that.
And this is in downtown Coeur d'Alene.
Yes,
right?
it is.
Yeah. Okay. So, but it's a county building?
Yes.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. And sadly, there's no question about it, this is long overdue. I mean, we have people basically sitting on top of each other. Kind of like if you go to New York City, how they park the cars on top of each other.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what this is like.
Yeah.
And it's terrible. It's not good working conditions. And so it definitely needs to be done. But this is a project that was initially proposed at $22 million that would be fully paid for by ARPA funds, which is money that came in from the federal government that went to all the cities, counties, and so forth, where they could use that for various projects. And excuse me. And so it shouldn't have been a problem, right? That's in February. Well, fast forward just 6 months, and the construction companies were doing their proposals to the county. And they're like, oh no, that's not going to be 22 million. This thing's going to be north of 30 million.
Ooh.
Oh man.
So anyone who thinks you can build a commercial structure for $300 a square foot is kidding themselves, because you can't build a home in Kootenai County for $300 a square foot, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So the initial proposal to me is very suspect, because it came from people who are in the industry, and they gave a number that doesn't even fit a per square foot value for construction that you can get anyplace else. So my first reaction was, how come these people weren't hauled before the board and kind of inquisitioned as to, what are you doing here? You told us this, and this construction company is saying it's going to be at least $8 million more. That's a big mark to be off of, right? If that's your business. So fast forward again from August of 2022 to December, again, before I took office, and the previous board increased the allocation from 22 to over 26 million of ARPA funds for this project. But they knew that that wasn't going to be enough. And so I take office. My first meeting on this Justice Center, the meeting is titled Project Cost. Project Cost. And so the presentation we got was $35 million. This is how much you can expect to spend on this building. Now, the way it was positioned to me by a contemporary of mine was that we have $15 million in reserves, $6 million will go to the building, and $6 million will go to the the completion of the jail pods. Well, turns out that the building wasn't $35 million. And I couldn't seem to get a good answer on how much this building is really going to cost, because the numbers, as what was proposed to me, would be finalized in August of this year. Well, August came and went, and they started digging. They started construction. Still didn't know what the total cost was.
Oh boy.
So go to September 21. I ask a department head, can you tell me how much this building is going to cost total? And I got two different answers, 38 million and 34.7 or 34.8 million. And the very next day I saw an email that was not sent to any of the commissioners that said that the cost of the building was 38.2 million. And that was on September 22nd. Well, by October 2nd, 10 days later, it had gone up to 38.5 million.
Oh, no.
Wow.
4 days after that, another 100,000. Now we're just under 38.8 million. So this is kind of that situation where, to me, I don't understand how we can already be in construction and not have a handle on the total cost.
Yeah.
That seems irresponsible for sure.
Yes. And I think it could have been managed significantly better. I've never built a building. First thing I would have done is hire someone who's built buildings and pay them to look out for me.
Right. That money will be worth it in the end.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It would, the couple of nickels that you spend for that person will save you gobs of dollars. Right. So that's what I would have done. It's water under the bridge at this point. But what I've said is that we're not going to continue this building unless our budget director is involved every step along the way. Okay. Our budget director was not included in any of the meetings.
That seems odd because it's such a big deal. Why?
It's only 38 million.
Yeah.
Right?
And where is this extra money coming from? Where are they proposing this is coming from?
That's a good question. We're going to
Just
find
magically
out.
have.
We're going to find out.
Okay.
I don't think you guys can print money like the federal government, right?
No.
Darn it.
They've been working on that, but no. So basically, we've got the budget director who's now going to be involved with the meetings. We're going to have the quarterly reports for the ARPA spending because the federal government wants to see how we're spending the money. That's going to be audited as well as provided to the board for our review and approval before the reports are submitted. And then we're going to have a public hearing, which is this coming Monday. And that's where we're going to see where the money comes from to pay for this building. Yesterday, we already allocated $9 million towards the completion of the jail pods and another $950,000 towards the Kootenai County North campus, which is an expansion building for the sheriff's office.
What is that, like a substation basically? Is that what it?
No, it's just they're just kind of overflowing. They've kind of outgrown their space, and so we're just adding some deputies up there.
Gotcha.
But all the services remain in the county seat, which is Coeur d'Alene.
Gotcha. Because some people might not know this. Kootenai County, they're contracted with the city of Hayden, right, to provide law enforcement. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So that's where that's going.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which is pretty common.
Well, it's not for Hayden; it's for the county.
Okay. Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a pretty large facility, so a lot of the patrol is going to end up there.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Interesting. So, and then this justice building, it's
a boondoggle.
Sounds like it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad there are people like you that are paying attention though, because it seems like if someone weren't paying attention, it could just keep going and going and going.
Well, the part that disappoints me is that we're now at this point and I finally figured it out because I didn't understand these numbers. They were never really clearly presented. There were other people managing this project and they didn't make it a point to say, hey, look, the cost keeps going up. Where are we going to get the money from? Mm-hmm. It continued to be a little bit of a no problem. Don't worry about it. We have it. We have it. The problem I have with that is that, yeah, we do have the money for it, but that money is at the expense of other future capital projects. We have software that needs to be updated, and that's multi-million-dollar, cost for that software. So it's very important that we don't overspend our savings for future needs.
Yeah.
As well as the economy.
Right.
We don't know where that's going to go either. So
what is the current state of like the budget for Kootenai County? Is Kootenai County doing well?
Yes.
Yeah.
Today it is.
Today. Good. And is that just because of an influx of people and then increase in tax base overall?
We have we had a couple different things happen. We had some URDs, urban renewal districts that expired. And so that means more money that comes in. We've had a little extra money coming in from the state, and then some of the tax rolls just came in a little better.
Yeah.
We also updated our fee structure. A lot of people don't realize that most of the money for the county comes from property taxes and fees.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got grants and some money from the state. So the county cannot make a profit when they charge a fee, but they can charge a fee that's equal to the cost. Now, I believe that the fees should definitely equal the cost because I don't want homeowners to bear the burden through their property taxes to subsidize services that should be paid for by fees.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so we went through the fees structure again this year and adjusted them to reflect the current costs.
Is that for like, what kind of fees would that be? Is that related to homes or
building?
Yeah. Okay.
Registrations, things
Gotcha.
like that.
Gotcha. And then do you want to touch on taxes a little bit? That's always a topic people are curious about.
Yes.
We've done some research on it ourselves because we do get asked that a lot, but I think that's worth touching on if you have some info on that.
Yeah. The commissioners are limited to increasing the rates by no more than 3%.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's good for the citizens, and it's not good for the citizens. And the main reason for that is because we have services that we must provide. And I don't want to charge 1 penny more or ask people to pay 1 penny more in taxes than they have to. However, if we want to have a safe community, if we want to have a community where we have a proactive law enforcement department and not a reactive law enforcement department, it costs money. Mm-hmm. And if we want to have a jail that's safe for the inmates, that costs money. The criminal justice system in Kootenai County costs roughly, it's close to half the budget, if not a little bit more.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I'm just talking, the sheriff's office is about a third, but then you've got the prosecutor's office. We also have public defender. And as you know, you want to have a good public defender because if people don't get proper representation, it's quite often through the appeal process, they can get off.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's really good to have good public defenders. It also leads to better law enforcement because they're going to follow the rules more. And it also makes for better prosecutions. And so all of this costs money. And so that to me is the number one priority, given the fact and the amount of growth that we've experienced, that we have a very proactive law enforcement component to our county government.
Yeah, I'm glad that you say that because I think that's what really makes the difference. When you see downtown Coeur d'Alene and how clean it is, I think that's a function of 100% of a proactive law enforcement and knowing how to deal with people and people that, you know, the homeless, there are none here almost. And having the resources to send them to, but also being able to enforce the law to keep them from doing the things that allow them to kind of infiltrate. Mm-hmm. And that's huge to me. And I hope that never changes.
That's called quality of life.
Yeah.
You know, but we also have a criminal element. I mean, this county is a large county.
Yeah.
And there's large swaths of it that never get patrolled. And you can pretty much do anything you want in the county. And as long as no one complains, it'll go on unnoticed. Mm-hmm. And we have a fentanyl problem every year. The death rate from fentanyl is doubling. And, you know, it's our kids that we have to protect. Right. So it's very important that we have the resources necessary. A lot of people don't realize that over in Spokane, they largely don't enforce the law, especially drug law, that much anymore. Right. And so they know about this particular gas station where you just pull up there and someone will come out from the weeds or the brush or whatever and ask you how many pills you want. Mm. You know, and I think it's like $1.30 or $1.40 a pill. And wow. You can buy 1,000 pills and transport that to Montana and sell them for $20,000.
Wow.
So $1,200, $1,300, $1,400 expense for the pills, drive 3-4 hours and you've made 18 grand.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. So, and of course, Kootenai County is at the intersection of 95 and I-90, right? So it's major thoroughfares that come through here.
Yeah. So I think drug interdiction is a big deal. I've seen our kids go to school down the road there towards Washington. So I've seen a deputy on the shoulder there a few times, and I'm thinking he's doing drug interdiction would be my guess. That was pretty common where I used to work is, you know, guys would get real good at that, sit mm-hmm. on the shoulder, and they're profiling not for race or anything like that, but for certain indicators that someone is trafficking, and they're good and they'll grab that stuff up, which is awesome.
Yeah. Well, I know when we're doing it right, when people are driving down through Boise.
Yeah. Right. They're going around.
Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah.
Cause it's too risky to come through here. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
I like to hear that. Yeah. What other, kind of growth factors are you seeing or issues you guys are running into?
Well, one of the things that I ran on was trying to stop irresponsible growth.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I think people don't understand, and they really need to learn it, is how the system works here in Idaho. Idaho is a very pro property rights state, which on its surface seems great. However, at some point as a community, I believe we should be able to dictate what we want our community to look like and how we want it to be. And so that runs into conflict with the idea of individual property rights when it comes to real estate. Okay. Should you be allowed to do anything you want on your property? Well, we know there's a limit. The question is, where's that limit? Okay. And should I be able to buy 100 acres and decide that I want to develop it and put 2,000 apartment buildings there, right? Apartment units next to your nice home where you have peace and tranquility. And you go, wait a second, this is going to ruin my neighborhood. This is going to change it forever. And when I say ruin it, not initially, but I think, in law enforcement, a lot of calls for service go to apartment communities.
Right. Yeah.
Outsized.
Yep.
Right. And it's not the first generation of tenants. It's usually by the third, fourth, or fifth generation, because these owners of these apartment buildings, they're not benevolent when it comes to the rates that they charge. They're not going to say, I'm not going to increase my rates because, these people can't afford it. They're going to charge the maximum amount they can because that's how they increase the value of their property. Okay. And it's going to be left upon us, the taxpayer, to figure out a way to make these housing units affordable. And that's why you often see subsidized housing eventually. Right. And then that leads to more calls for service. Right.
100%.
That's right. And then, of course, your healthcare gets delivered or dispensed from the ambulance and the emergency room. Right. And so we have to pay for that because hospitals are not allowed to turn people away if they don't have health insurance.
Yeah.
Right. So something that was very small in the beginning that could have been addressed easily at a clinic ends up becoming an emergency room situation.
I can't tell you how many times I've seen that. You talk to any ambulance driver too, and they're like, someone will call in, I've got a cough. I need a ride in the ambulance, and they can't say no.
And so where as a community can we draw the line on that? And that's where I get back to the density leading to more liberal policies. And that's just that's the way it works. And so when we talk to people who have very strong property rights convictions, what they're basically saying is that we end up shooting ourselves in the foot that way because we say, I want to be able to do whatever I want with my property. I want to be able to develop it however I want. If I buy 40 acres, I want to be able to sell off, 4 or 5 acre parcels whenever I want and just increase the density. But as you're doing that, you're changing the community that drew you here because of the space, because of the lower density. And so that's where, as a community, I do believe we should be able to say what we want and what we don't want.
I guess there's a delicate balance there too with affordable housing for people and that, like you just talked about.
Well, you tell me what affordable housing is. Because here's the problem, and this is the way that I see it, is we're witnessing millions of people coming over the border right now, every year.
Yeah.
Okay. They're being right now bussed into communities all over the country. Okay. So now we have these people who are watching their communities change in ways that make them very uncomfortable, and they're leaving. Okay. So now when you have 1 million people throughout the country who are leaving these communities and they want to move to places like here, how will you ever get affordable housing?
Good point. The demand is too much and it just drives the price right up.
That's right. There's no such thing as that. So it's either market rate or it's subsidized. There's no in between. There's no gray area on that.
I like the way you look at that.
I mean, I think
that's factual, right? Yeah.
And so, from my perspective, I would like to see the density remain low, but the consequence of that is that your property values are probably going to go through the roof.
Right.
Okay. Now we can build, and I've seen this too. Where I came from, they build lots of starter condos, lots of apartments, and those starter condo, the values never go up because there's always new ones going in, right? Until the last one goes in, and then the values start to go up because now you're reaching that supply and demand. Supply becomes limited or finite, and so demand will drive the prices up. And I've seen that.
Yeah.
Where you can buy a starter condo, and it did not. I remember my sister bought one, and it didn't go up in price at all for the entire time she lived there. And then as soon as she sold it, it doubled in value, right afterwards. And that's just how that works.
Yeah.
And those communities, by the way, they change, and they, again, more calls for service,
right?
More ambulance calls, and they just become a much more expensive part of the community that we as taxpayers have to fix and deal with.
So it seems like now, if you look through Hayden and Post Falls and all that, like that's happening. We're having so much building going on. There's all kinds of residential communities, apartment buildings, condos being built everywhere.
Yes.
So I don't know. Where does this lead?
Well, I guess we'll just have to wait 5 years.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine it's going to lead differently than any other community in this country.
Right. Which, I mean, 100% has to. With more people is going to come more problems, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah.
And that's going to frustrate those that grew up here even more. And then,
Yes.
and those that have been here a long time, it's the same thing. Like, you moved here for a reason, and now that reason is like, slipping.
A lot of the people who are in charge, I don't believe have gone through some of the experiences that many of us who have relocated here have seen. And so their decisions are made with good intentions, but I don't think they understand the consequences of those decisions because they seem so innocuous at first. They seem like they're really helping people and they're helping the community.
Right. Because you're thinking, oh, we're putting more housing in. We're going to keep the housing prices down. But I see your point on that.
Yeah.
Is that hard to combat that from where you're at? Is it hard to get your point across to them, to other people?
Well, I say to them exactly what I just said today. I mean, there's no such thing as affordable housing when you have 1 million people who want to move here. When other parts of the country are changing so dramatically that these people no longer want to live there. I mean, COVID was a great experiment for people to see just how tyrannical their local governments were.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I call them micro tyrants. These people wanted to tell you everything that you could do. I mean, in some respects, it felt like being in boot camp again, when they're telling you what you got to wear and what time you got to be there and, what you're going to do and all those kinds of things, which is to me, not who we are.
Yeah.
Certainly as conservatives. I believe that you should be given all the information, good information, and let you make that decision.
Yeah.
But my job is to make sure that you get good information.
Yeah. That's the way it should be. I mean, we've encountered, and we were part of that, of people literally who felt like they were running for their lives. And like they will do anything to get here or places like this. Like,
yes.
You know what I mean? They'll sacrifice whatever they have to because they literally feel like their family's lives depend upon it. So that's where, I don't know that the growth will slow. I don't know.
No, but there are things that we can do. And I'm focused on that right now with our comp plan, which is our long-term plan. State law requires every jurisdiction to have a long-term plan. And so we're in the process now, the very beginning processes of setting up so we can get feedback from the community. Because right now, I don't believe more people in this community want more growth. In fact, when I was running for office, no one came up to me and said, Bruce, Kootenai County's not growing fast enough. What can you do? No one said that.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I want to get feedback from the community, and that will be the driver for our comp plan. And that comp plan will basically set where the guardrails are, like on a road of what's acceptable for growth projects and what's not. And anything that falls outside of those guardrails has to come before the board. And that's where I want us to build. I refer to it as like a dashboard, similar to the dashboard on your car. So you have a speedometer. It tells you if you're going too fast or too slow. a tachometer. It's got a little yellow check engine light that says, something's not going right, but it's not imminent that you need to pull over. So I'd like to do the same thing, for example, with our sheriff's office. How many inmates do we have on a daily basis, like a 50-day or 100-day moving average, compared to what is our legal limit? What is our capacity to handle more solid waste, for example? And at what point are we going to start running out of space, given the trajectory of the amount of refuse that we're dealing with?
Yeah.
Right. And so you'll be able to look at these little indicators of how efficient our county services are to the population that we have. And that hopefully will be used for decision-making on growth projects. Because if we can't support it, why are we saying yes to it? Right. If 1 million people, all the people who own land decided they wanted to develop at the same time, could we reasonably say yes and support that? And the answer is no. The only reason we can support it is because it happens through incrementally. But we're not paying attention to our ability to provide county services for people. And I think that is very important when we make our decisions, especially if you look at like the number of deputies per 1,000 residents. They do the same thing in Coeur d'Alene. I think they're about 1.74 police officers per 1,000 residents.
Yeah.
So where do we want to be, and where are we right now?
Yeah. Are you do you feel like you're a lone voice out there, or are there other managers that are like understanding that mentality?
The people I talk to, they seem to be very receptive to it. But it's not like they're cause celeb or anything like that. And the way I look at this project is that it's very long-term. We've hit a very recent growth spurt here, and it's probably going to slow down thanks to Powell at the Federal Reserve increasing the interest rates. Right.
Yeah, it's definitely slowed things down.
Yeah. And consequently, we're going to kind of get to a more normal rate of growth stability, and the growth will probably be very minimal, like it was between 2013 and 2019, 2020. But with that said, I want us to be ready for when that next round of growth comes, so that the community doesn't change so quickly.
Yeah.
Because that is what's hard. It's one thing to have slow and steady. It's another to have just this massive change overnight. Because, a community by definition are the people who live within it. And this community is defined not by the mountains, not by the lake, but by the people who live here. And when you change the people who live in a community, by default, you are changing the community. And you could ask the same question with a country. When you are changing the people who are coming into this country, with the people who are here, you are by default changing this country. And the same concept applies at the community level.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I had a good question and it slipped my mind. Darn it.
We can get back to that.
It'll come back to me. Yeah.
Hopefully not 2 minutes after we finish.
Probably will. I love talking about growth. Oh, I remember what it was. So, because we talk about this a lot, obviously we're in real estate, but I feel like as soon as the interest rates drop down, like if we see 5% again, it's going to go bonkers again. That's what it feels like to us.
Even in early spring, when interest rates just dipped down a little bit, we saw floodgate open a little bit again. And then as soon as they went back up a little bit, kind of slammed it shut a little.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think as soon as we see interest rates,
it's kind of scary.
Yeah.
We're starting to kind of lay foundations in our business just so we can be ready for that when it does happen, which I think it will. Mm-hmm. So I get that's a good point that you guys are, planning for that too.
That's what I'm working on.
Trying to plan for that.
It takes time.
It does. And that's one of the things about government compared to private sector business. If I want to do something, I can just do it quickly.
Yeah.
Here you have other people. And of course you have statute that you must follow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it'll take time.
What other growth things are being considered? I guess there's a lot of infrastructure as far as roadways, things like that. Is that?
Well, there's impact fees.
Mm-hmm.
The state recently passed some legislation to kind of clarify and let us charge impact fees. But I have to tell you, as much as we know that this is a great state, and it is a great state, I'm very disappointed in the fact that our state legislature sometimes really misses the mark, and the impact fee statutes really did.
Yeah.
And the main reason for that is because when you look at it on its surface, it looks great. We get to charge fees so that growth pays for growth. But as you dig a little bit more into the statute, what you realize is that it's window dressing. And it's window dressing that looks wonderful, probably crafted by the building association. Because the way it works is the impact fees that we collect can only be used on long-term assets like buildings.
Mm.
If we don't spend the money we collect within 8 years, we have to give it back to the developer.
Oh, wow.
Now, the life cycle of buildings goes far beyond an 8-year cycle,
Right.
We can't use it for patrol cars. We can't use it for firearms. We can't use it for uniforms. We can't use it for anything like that.
Yeah.
Right. So what happens is that the only way we can effectively use it is if we incur debt, because we can use it to service debt, but you can't take on debt in this state unless you get 2/3 majority vote. So as you can see, it's functionally dysfunctional.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's no way that we're really ever going to be able to collect fees that are going to be used in a way so that growth legitimately can pay for growth.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's got to be really hard to kind of navigate all of this, dealing with restrictions like that.
Well, there's not much to really navigate, knowing that it's just not going to be effective.
Yeah.
You can try to, we're in the process of trying to get these things implemented, and something is better than nothing. But is it really going to make a difference? No. And so what's happened is that the citizens here are now burdened with the cost of paying for the growth, ultimately in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the jail pods, the completion of that's coming from taxpayer dollars. That's not coming from new growth.
Right.
Yeah. And so that's the problem. And if you really get down to the heart of the issue, it all comes down to 2 words: cost shifting. How can I shift my cost onto you?
Mm.
And that, in essence, is what this is. Because if you can shift the cost of growth onto the existing residents, then you can make more profit. Because in the real estate business, there's always a ceiling of how much you can charge for real estate, right? And so the way you make your money is by cutting your costs, especially in development. But when you have large impact fees that go on top of your regular costs, well, that interferes with your profit margins. And so effectively, they can shift the cost onto the citizens that already live here.
Yeah. What do you see this area like in 10 years?
It probably will be very unrecognizable.
You think so?
Yeah.
Just
Probably.
with like density or just everything?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because one of the largest drivers of density are the cities.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people don't realize that once land gets annexed into the cities, they're no longer subject to the county. It's now the cities.
Mm-hmm.
And the cities generally promote more density. You see that in Post Falls.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
You see that even a little bit here in Coeur d'Alene. And Hayden, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Gosh. What, we always ask this question to people, and what's like your favorite thing about North Idaho?
The people.
Yeah.
That's what defines this community.
Yeah.
There's a lot of really good, solid, rational thinking people who recognize what's going on in this country. They've left from other parts of the country that are no longer recognizable to them. And they don't want to see that happen here.
Mm-hmm.
And so they get engaged. The only thing I can ask is that just try to learn how it works in Idaho.
Yeah.
Read the statutes, learn how things work in your own community, because you can't really manifest change just by saying, well, why don't you just do this? Or why don't you just do that? It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
If you want to do those things, you got to change the rules. And that usually requires going down to Boise. So if you can't change the rules in Boise, then figure out how to manage within the rules at your local level.
Yeah.
So now can those impact fees that you were talking about and how they're not really quite usable here, is that something that can be changed on the state level by going to Boise and like?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And in fact, I tell all of our local legislators a 1 character amendment to that statute is all we need. Just add a 1 in front of the 8. Give us 18 years to spend that money. You know, that's all. If we can't spend it in 18 years on a building, you know, we'll give it back to the developer.
Yeah.
But 8 years, that's not enough time.
Yeah.
Do you think that was an oversight, or do you think that they did that intentionally?
Well, I mean, we're talking about pretty smart people.
Yeah.
We're talking about attorneys reviewing documents. It's hard for me to think that it was just an oversight.
They're just trying to look good.
Yeah, a lot of this legislation, you have lobbyists. I mean, we have strong lobbyists down in Boise. And people sometimes don't realize that. It's every state capital has them.
Yeah.
Now on our, here in North Idaho, politically, like, and I don't know how much you see or are involved with the city as well, but are you seeing people who are running and people who are getting involved being more on the liberal side? Or are we staying pretty conservative?
Well, it's a good question. What's happening now is that on the conservative side, which is our central committee, the local Republican Central Committee, which is the official Republican Party in Kootenai County, has gotten involved in nonpartisan races as far as vetting candidates. And that's really one of those areas where people on the left typically run for office in these nonpartisan races because they don't really have to reveal or talk about their political leanings or ideology. Okay. So once the Central Committee got involved in that, it kind of motivated people on the other side to get more involved. And so you're seeing much more of a fight now for these positions, these seats. I think the most important thing is that we get people who say they are, you know, who they say they are. Okay. And that they genuinely want to reflect what the community wants. And that the other thing is we should be very careful about electing people where this ends up being a step up for them, whether it's a social promotion, a monetary promotion, things like that. You want people who have good experience that they can bring to the table and are thoughtful and can think critically.
Yeah, I love it. This is good. I often think about like the state of the country, and I feel like I'm very thankful that we live where we do. You feel the same way? I mean, yeah, I feel like this could be one of the last holdouts down the line here.
Well, when you watch what happened during COVID,
yeah,
you can see the difference.
There you go. Right.
I mean, it was very disappointing to see the local health district declare that everyone needed to wear a mask or pay $100 fine. I didn't understand. I read the statute. I didn't understand how you could quarantine a healthy person.
Right.
But I guess they wanted to shut off 95 and 90 into the county and just keep us all stuck in here.
Yeah. I'm disappointed in that as well. I have a friend that works in the hospital system here, and he said they had a COVID outbreak recently, and they started requiring their employees to wear masks, and he was pretty upset about that and wondering, what if I don't comply? What's going to happen? And I hate seeing that.
Well, they did the same thing with the vax mandate in Idaho. And one of the things, and I look at politics a lot more different sometimes than, just the person who kind of blurts out, I'm a conservative and I believe in property rights and things like that. I believe that we should have the government we want. The left gets the government they want in their cities.
Yeah.
Right. So why should we be afraid of government? Why should we say we don't want any government?
Right.
Or extreme limited government? I want government to do what I want it to do for my community. Okay. And that includes not letting people build lead smelting plants or, 2,000 apartment units next to where I live and ruin the whole, the views, the space, the lack of density.
Yeah.
I want government to help me with that. And I also want government to keep businesses from imposing draconian rules on employees that force them to have to face whether they want to engage in a company policy like taking a vaccine that has not been properly tested, right? It takes about 10 years, or lose your job and not be able to take care of your family.
Right.
I mean, that to me is, an abomination in essence, to allow corporations to do that to their own people.
Yeah.
I mean, because if I'm a government official and I want that to happen, well, what prevents me from going to a corporation to say, well, I'm not going to impose the law, right? I'm not going to block your freedom of speech. I'll just get YouTube to shut you down, or I'll get, Facebook to deplatform you.
Yep.
Right. So they don't need the laws at that point. And the government's job is to protect us from these kinds of infringements.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I think we should try to have the government that we want for our community and not be afraid of government, but we have to just figure out where that right amount is.
Yeah. I love the way you think.
Sure.
I'm really glad we had this conversation. Any other points that you wanted to touch on?
Boy, we could be here for a long time.
Got some good ones?
We could be here for a long time. Right now we do have, we have a ballot initiative for an open space bond. It's coming up here in this November election.
Okay.
And, I really like it in the sense that, and I'm torn about this. I really like it because if we get the 2/3 votes, the citizens basically will give the county the authorization to borrow up to $50 million to buy up land on the prairie.
Oh.
And turn it into parkland so it'll never be developed.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Okay. And I think that this is a wonderful program. The part that tears me a little bit is that we have a Justice Center expansion that started off at $22 million and now is at $38.8 million. And it bothers me because we should be better than that. And I want the citizens to be confident that if they're going to allow us to borrow money, to buy up land, that we're going to do it the right way and that they're going to be extremely happy with the results of that. And so that's where I'm torn about this. But this is an opportunity for the citizens to have a direct say over the trajectory of growth. Will this stop growth? No. Will this slow it down some? Probably, especially if there's less density on the prairie.
Mm-hmm.
And it opens up more space for people to be able to use in perpetuity. This land can never be sold for a profit. It can't be developed. It can't be turned into fairgrounds or anything like that. It is open space, open parkland space.
I love it.
I do too. I think it's much needed.
Oh, yeah. Are you getting pushback on that? Is it the old argument of like, I just don't want to pay more taxes or anything like that?
A little bit.
Yeah.
But you see, here's the thing. Okay. And people have to understand this. Everything is framed right now in a very binary choice between paying more taxes or paying less taxes, right? Remember that sticker that you'd see on the cars back in the 70s? It was gas, grass, or butt. No one rides for free, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, no one rides for free with growth, okay? You're either going to be spending your time sitting in your car seat, wasting your gas, going through, multiple light cycles to get through an intersection.
Yeah.
You're going to be standing in line where the grass grows under your feet when you're at the checkout at the store, or you're going to pay for it with a few extra dollars in your tax money, but you're going to pay for growth one way or another. You're going to pay for you're going to have a cost to the consequence of growth.
Mm-hmm.
And so my argument is that for a few extra bucks, it'll lead to less density and more open space. And we know that when people are around open space, they're happier, they're healthier, right? I mean, we know that.
Yeah.
So for a few extra bucks and with that less density, it'll probably help your property values.
Would, how much land are we talking? Do you roughly any idea? Or we're talking, hundreds of acres, I would assume. Well, as you know, real estate's pretty expensive here. It is, yes.
$50 million, that might get you a 2-bedroom, Now, my hope is that we can work with some of the families who do own large tracts of land.
Right.
And try to find a way where in exchange for maybe selling it to the county for a little bit of a break, not a lot, but a little bit, we can do something in exchange. I don't know if that would include naming a park after the family name or something like that. But that way we could buy up as much as we could, but I don't know how much that would be. If we get the approval on the bond, we don't have to spend the money immediately. We could wait until we find the right time, the right properties to buy. where we can get more value for the money. And that could be 5 years. We might find something for $10 million, and then we would buy a $10 million piece of land, turn it into parkland. Okay. And it may not be another 10 years until we find another lot to purchase. But each of those purchases will be amortized over 20 years to pay back. And then if we make another purchase before the first purchase is paid off, then we would just stack those payments on top of each other.
Yeah. I think that's a cool idea.
Yeah.
Is the focus of that like the prairie area? I guess that's probably
the
only spot to go, huh?
The Rathdrum Prairie.
Yeah. That'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
Because you drive out there now and you look at the farms that are still there, and every time I drive by a picture, okay, that's going to be, 1,000 houses.
This is all going to be houses someday.
That's the new crop.
Yeah.
Tract housing.
Yeah. Which is, they do okay with it. They do a fair amount of green space, but it's not, it's not a park.
Yeah. And, and this is a good example too of how density changes a community. The farmers out there used to burn the fields.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Now they can't.
And they couldn't do it because at some point someone moved up here and said, nope, the smoke is bothering me too much.
Yeah.
And it became such a hassle. The farmer said, to heck with it. Because if I can't farm the way that I can farm most efficiently, then why should I continue farming? And so that's how a community changes as more density, occurs.
Man, I think that's a cool idea.
Yeah.
I didn't even know about that. So that'll be on the election in November.
It'll be on the ballot.
Yep.
And we'll start ramping up, getting more communication out there. But like I said, it's very difficult because we've got this justice center that, is becoming a boondoggle. And I don't want people to lose confidence in our ability to do what's right for them.
Yeah. Any other hot topics?
Not right now.
Okay.
Not right now.
This has been a really good conversation. I'm super happy to have that. I can't wait to share this because I learned a ton today. I'm really happy to know that you're out there in government. I have never met you before, and this has been good. I like the way you think. I think a lot of people will if they don't know you. And we will have to have you back on again periodically just to get updates, because this is a great way to get information out.
Yeah, anytime. And, again, I really emphasize that the community, the people who care about this community, get to know your elected officials.
Yeah.
Get to understand how the system works, and if you really want, and you have the time, get involved. When I signed up for the reserves when I was younger, that was what I thought would be my term, to serve the country.
Yeah.
And now we're watching our country change from within. And so this is my second term to do what I can to prepare our community to be good, to be in a good fiscal position, but also to be able to manage things that could happen that other communities are already experiencing. And we don't want those things to happen here.
Love it. Great information.
Yeah, we appreciate you.
Yeah. Thank you, Bruce. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Talk to you later.